then I was on the golf cart.
Yeah, you did a great job.
I remember shooting Kyle like 3 times.
Good evening. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners and welcome everyone for being with us tonight. We're happy to have a full house. We're going to be led tonight in the Pledge of Allegiance by two students from Carver Elementary School. Y'all get up and come over to the podium for me, please. This is Emma Cutrell. She's a model student, and she serves on the student council as one of our fourth grade representatives and is a strong student academically. Emma has organized a writing and art club that also meet outside one day a week during recess, so you're quite the leader. Logan Champion is the other one that's here tonight with us, the other student, and he's a wonderful class helper and rule follower. He's always willing to lend a hand to his classmates in need. Logan serves as a fourth grade student council representative and is also a strong student academically. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Congratulations on being recognized by your schools and chosen to be here with us tonight. So, would you like us to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank y'all very much. Our invocation tonight is from the Wendell Council of Churches. It's for L. Briggerman. Thank you for being with us tonight and all the many nights that you're here.
Seems like.
You.
Could I make a
You sure can.
little presentation here? This is the week that we do the Samaritan's Purse, Operation Christmas Child. And so there's boxes all over town for this. We are at about 770 boxes today. Mm-hmm. And so if you have not got a box, find a box. We've got them in several of the restaurants, and it's a really great opportunity to help some child in some other country. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank
you.
Good.
Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this day. We are so honored, Lord, to be in your presence. We are so honored, Lord, of the blessed day that you gave us. We are so honored, Lord, by the opportunities you give us to serve you and to serve others. We ask you, Lord, to be with us this evening as our city council has decisions to make, Lord, that is in the best interest of our community. We just know, Lord, that you are here. We just ask that for your guidance through all of this. We just know, Lord, during this time of the year, it's really a great time of the year, and it's also a time of sorrow for some folks. We just ask you, Lord, to help us with some of our neighbors who need help during this time of the year, and we just give you all the praise and glory for that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. There's no one signed up for public comment. So a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Now we're going to recognize, agenda item number 4 is the recognition of Carver Elementary School teacher, Miss Ashlyn Golden. Miss Golden, if you'd come to the podium. Miss Golden is new to Carver Elementary this year, and they are so fortunate to have her, they feel, as a member of their Carver family. She teaches second grade and has done an amazing job quickly establishing a positive relationship with children, staff, and parents. She is an enthusiastic, passionate educator, as is evident in her attitude, the high level of student engagement in her classroom, as well as the successes her students are experiencing every day. Ms. Golden is a strong collaborator and communicator with all members of the Carver community and is a joy to have on staff at Carver Elementary School. We just wanted to invite you here tonight to thank you for all the things that you're doing for our children in Wendell, and congratulations for being chosen from Carver Elementary School to represent them here tonight.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, we are always open to have volunteers to come read to our children and be involved within the school. So
Great.
just reach out and contact the school and get that cleared away.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is a presentation of the Town of Wendell 2017 Audit Report by Petway, Mills, and Pearson. And this, we're going to receive that tonight from Ms. Phyllis Pearson.
Okay, for the year ended June 30th, 2017, we audited the financial statements of the town. We reviewed your underlying documentation and records for your financial statements and issued an unmodified audit opinion. It's the best audit report that an auditor will give. We've also issued an unmodified audit opinion on an audit conducted under government auditing standards because we examined the internal control over your financial reporting and compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, and grant agreements. Governmental activities of the town had total assets of $14.6 million, total liabilities of a little over $8 million, total net assets $6.5 million. Your total cash on hand was $4.7 million. You had total governmental revenues of $6.2 million, total expenses $6.4 million. In your business type activities, you had $2.4 million in total assets. This is the amount that's due from the City of Raleigh for debt payment. And then the total liabilities is $2.4 million. That's the amount of the debt that you owe on the water sewer system. Total revenues was $71,000 and total expenditures, which is interest expense, was $71,000. Your general fund had $9.2 million in total assets, total liabilities $2.3 million, total fund balances $6.8 million, total revenues $8.4 million, and total expenditures $6.9 million. As of June 30th, your unassigned fund balance was $5.3 million. You're required to have 8% of your prior year expenditures in your unassigned fund balance. That recommended amount would have been $559,000, so you more than exceed that recommendation. The primary reason for the increase in your unassigned fund balance was that you entered into debt of about $2.1 million, and then that debt is not fully expended, but it is recognized as revenue in the modified accrual statement, so that shows your increase in fund balance. There were changes in accounting policies during the year related to recording pension liabilities for the law enforcement officer's separation allowance. That resulted in roughly a reduction in prior year net position of $539,000. The GASB is requiring a series of implementations over a period of roughly 5 years where the actuarial determined liabilities are being recorded in the financial statements. There were no changes in your use of estimates. Your most sensitive disclosure within the financial statements deal with your capital assets and your debt. And in the notes to the statements, you can find the further details about those issues. We had no disagreements with management. Management's representation letter was signed timely and promptly. The report was submitted timely to the Local Government Commission. The due date, of course, is October 31st, and this report was well within, roughly 2 weeks before that due date when we submitted. There were no uncorrected misstatements, and we thank you for the opportunity to do the audit and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody have a question from Ms. Pearson? Gentlemen?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion. Thank you for the report, and it seems to be like it was a very good report for the town, and thanks to the town staff then for complying with this one. I'll make a motion that we approve the audit report for the 2016-2017 fiscal year.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is a presentation by Spectrum on Internet Assistance Program. Thank you for being with us tonight, Ms.
Thank
Bailey.
you. Good evening, council, well, commissioners, and mayor. My name is Mia Bailey. I work in the Government Affairs Department of Charter Communications Spectrum. You probably know us by our brand Spectrum a little bit better. And I'm here to give you an overview of our Spectrum Internet Assist program. Now, Spectrum Internet Assist was born maybe about a year ago, a little over a year and a half ago, and it was Charter Communications' effort to try to bridge the digital divide for some of our most vulnerable populations, our senior citizens and our students in K through 12. With any program, there's qualifications that need to be met. Generally speaking, students that participate in a free or reduced lunch program would qualify for the Spectrum Internet Assist program. Senior citizens 65 years of age or older that receive income as SSI income, generally speaking, would probably qualify for the Spectrum Internet Assist SIA program. But with any program, there are disqualifications. Residential customers that have received broadband service from Spectrum in the last 30 days would not qualify until that waiting period is over. Any outstanding debt, whether it's in collections or debts that haven't been paid, would not qualify until those debts are taken care of. What you get with the SIA program are fast internet speeds, 30 megabits download, 4 megabits upload for $14.99 a month. You get a self-installed modem. For additional $5, you can have wireless throughout your home. So SIA customers, if they see promotional items out that are being advertised for TV and for telephone bundles, they'd be qualified, they'd be eligible for those things too. How you sign up, you complete an eligibility verification process. You can call into the toll-free number or you can fill it out online, and you can sign up at the same time. And that's the conclusion of my very short presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Bailey? Go ahead.
I do. Are you alerting families and people about this program?
I'm coming and doing presentations like this. It's
Okay.
available on our website. I've given some information to Ms. Piner and Ms. Scoggins that will be available, and I've also made connection with the school system and hopefully be working with them going forward to see if we can get that information out to students.
Thank you.
That was going to be my next suggestion, was to get to the schools.
Yeah, there's actually some ideas that Ms. Scoggins and I talked about with the Cramden Institute and some other opportunities I look forward to sharing with you and working with the school
They can certainly facilitate
system.
that better than we can, actually. So that's
Okay.
great. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Item number 7 is a presentation of a facade grant request for 11 West 3rd Street. We'll hear from Mr. Reedy.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the board. Tonight, the Board of Commissioners is requested to review, discuss, and take action on the Appearance Commission's recommendation regarding the downtown facade grant request. At its November 6th meeting, the Appearance Commission reviewed one application for the October 1st period. The request is the first and only facade grant application that was received prior to the first Appearance Commission meeting this cycle. The members voted 6-0 to recommend approval of the downtown facade grant in the full amount of $1,000. They noted that the application met the intent of the program. The application is for 11 West 3rd Street, which was applied for on October 21st by the building owners Bobby and Shirley Walker. The application is to remove the blue cedar shake siding, replace 2 large existing windows with new windows of the same size, and add 3 smaller windows above the existing windows and the door. Also to replace the front door and paint the exterior of the building. The property is being renovated by the owners to create a shell building that they would then lease to a prospective business. It's within the DMX zone. The total estimated cost of the project is $4,900, and they've applied for the full $1,000. Staff has reviewed the application and found it complete with project cost, project details, and photos of the existing facade. There's a picture of the existing building, and then just a simple mock-up of how it would look with the windows and transom. Staff requests that the Board of Commissioners review the recommendation of the Appearance Commission and render action on the submitted application.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Reedy?
The rest of the building is structurally sound, correct?
As far as they found so far. They do have a building permit for the renovation just to get it to a shell, so it'll be going through normal inspections. But when they went through their due diligence, they didn't find anything alarming other than needing a new roof.
And Patrick, just to refresh my memory, this is paid out after the...
After
work
they've
is done?
completed,
Okay,
correct.
okay, making sure.
Are there any further questions?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the facade grant request for 11 West 3rd Street.
All right, we have a motion to approve the facade grant request. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is a public hearing to consider text amendments to Chapter 2 of the UDO as it relates to temporary electronic message board and mobile signs. Mr. Bergmark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is a text amendment to Chapter 12 related to temporary signs. This is something that came up in September when we had a electronic message board sign placed in the back of a pickup truck that was right on Wendell Boulevard near the school. Created a lot of concern regarding safety and appearance, and as a result, at the September 25th meeting, this board directed staff to look at making a change or initiating a text amendment to add temporary electronic message board signs to the prohibited signs section, which is section 12.9 of the UDO. In addition to this change, staff is recommending that 12.7D3, which is mobile signs, be deleted for clarity. Legally, it doesn't have to be done because that doesn't speak specifically to electronic message board signs, but it speaks to the type of setup that generally would be used for these signs being placed in the back of a vehicle. So we just think for clarity, it would be better. But again, that is at the discretion of the board. These changes would not prevent NCDOT or police or other government bodies from erecting temporary directional and information signs. This is already permitted in section 12.8, which is signs not requiring a permit. Language has also been added to section 12.9 to kind of clarify this point. Likewise, these changes would not prevent a permanent electronic message board sign from being erected, as that would be part of a permitted monument or wall sign. So in your report, you have the proposed amendments with the amended text shown in red. So within 12.9, we've simply added a J, which is temporary electronic message board sign, and again, 12.9 is the prohibited sign section. So this would list temporary electronic message board signs as a prohibited sign type, with a note clarifying that, again, that this provision would not include directional or informational signs erected and maintained by public agencies or government bodies, which are permitted by section 12.8. Again, if we need police to be giving directional signage, on a temporary basis, we could still do that due to a road closure or anything along those lines. And then with the other change that staff had recommended between 12.7D3, which is the temporary signs requiring a permit section, was that section that talked about mobile signs, signs mounted on a mobile framework or trailer or other movable apparatus other than a vehicle used for transporting. So that just removing that, just so someone didn't read that and assume that they could have it, and not reading the other section. The planning board did receive this material at their October 16th meeting. They expressed some concerns over how broad the language was in terms of completely banning temporary electronic message board signs. Some members suggested that a narrower rule could prevent this from being within the downtown or close to the school. And they also pointed out that if approved, the proposed language would cause any mobile food truck set up in town using an electronic message board sign, which some may have that, and others don't, to be in violation of the UDO. For these reasons, they actually voted against the proposed text amendment. I will say that the mobile food truck is a valid concern on its face. At the same time, with zoning violations, if we note something like that, our procedure would be to send a notice to the property owner and then give them 7 days to come into compliance. If they're here for a festival or something, they're not going to be here in 7 days. So on a practical standpoint, I don't know that would really be a concern from an enforcement standpoint, but I did want to at least note that. So for those reasons, they did vote to recommend denial. So if this board wanted to move forward, it would require a 4 out of 5 vote to approve. And staff staff is in favor of the change. If we wanted to tailor it to make it a little bit more specific, either location-wise or size-wise, we could do so, or we could leave it as is. Be happy to take any questions the board may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bergman?
David, if I'm driving my billboard on the back of my truck through town under this, am I in violation?
So if you're driving it through town, as long as you're not stopping, I don't think you'd create any problem. Again, just like the mobile food truck, our only way to address something from a zoning standpoint is to mail a property owner. If you're just driving on the streets through town, there's no one to mail, there's nothing to follow up on. It's only if you stopped and parked it consistently in a spot that it would be any kind of an issue. Because yeah, there's a lot of vehicles that may have signage on the side of the van, and that's just is what it is, and it isn't considered a zoning violation.
Any other questions?
David, was the size of the sign, was that discussed at all at the planning board as far as a particular, in order to make it more specific?
That was just something I threw out as an option that no one really grabbed on, only as a possible way to address their concern over mobile food signs, over a mobile food truck. A mobile food truck, they might have some kind of menu that's an electronic message board, but it's not going to be nearly as large as what we saw out there on Wendell Boulevard. I think the one on Wendell Boulevard, if I remember correctly, was 18 square feet. If they want to have some kind of little, small header or a menu that was, I think I threw out there 6 square feet or something like that, that could be a way you could possibly address something like that. I don't know that you need to, though, because again, if they're coming here for a festival and they're here for 2 days and then they're gone, it's not really going to be an issue from an enforcement standpoint, because there's nothing really to enforce, because we know that they won't be there in a week.
Anyone else? Okay, public hearing's now open. Anyone wish to speak for or against text amendment to the UDO? All right. Public hearing's now closed. Gentlemen, what's y'all's pleasure?
I make a motion to approve the changes to the UDO, staff suggests.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the changes suggested by staff, changes to the UDO as suggested by staff. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
I have a little discussion.
Yeah.
The reason this came up was because we had an issue. We had a mobile sign that was parked at least close to the right-of-way, in a school zone, in a curve, beside a crosswalk, during school hours, next to a side street, in the site triangle. We had an issue. That it was there. While I understand the concerns about the, a food truck having an electronic message sign or something like that, to me it's a little theoretical, and as Mr. Burmark explained, we're talking about a temporary thing. We're talking about if you're going to send a notice to the property owner and they have 7 days to comply, then they're going to be gone, and I think that should alleviate those concerns. My concern is having, video boards put up in places that are unsafe. And like I said before, to my mind, this has nothing to do with whether I think they look nice or they're tacky or I don't want them or I do want them. To me, it's strictly a safety issue. And so that's why I made a motion to approve it, is because we've had the issue of these signs in town, and it was concerning to a lot of people. And if it becomes a problem with the food truck or anything else like that, then we can come back and look at it, but that hasn't happened yet, and I'm not super concerned about that.
Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 9 is a public hearing to consider a text amendment to Chapter 9 of the UDO as it relates to site triangle standards. Mr. Bergmark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. Again, you're being asked to hold an additional public hearing related to text amendment related to site triangle standards, which is housed in Chapter 9 of our UDO. You have an ordinance that's attached if you are prepared to take action at the end of the public hearing. The applicant, which in this case is Newland Communities, has submitted a text amendment to change 9.3E3, which describes the town's site triangle provisions. The site triangle is essentially an imaginary triangular area along street intersections, which must be kept free of any structures taller than 3 feet in height in order to maintain visibility for motorists approaching the intersection. As currently stated in our code, the site triangle extends 25 feet in either direction from where the right-of-way of each street intersect. The standard site triangle for NCDOT, compared to ours, is a 10-foot by 70-foot site triangle easement, which doesn't extend as far down what you'd call the secondary road, but ensures greater visibility along your primary road. Both site triangle standards have their merits. For the intersection of two local low-traffic roads, the town's current standard may be better suited, but when one road is higher speed or planned to receive significantly more traffic than the other, then DOT's standard is often preferable. So you have in attachment A the applicant's proposed amendment, which they're proposing to amend the UDO in order to provide the zoning administrator the option of applying either site's triangle standard based upon which one is more appropriate in a given situation. So essentially that language would add language that would state in lieu of the 25 by 25 site triangle, and upon request of the applicant, the administrator may also, where conditions warrant it, elect to require the standard NCDOT minimum site triangle for a stop condition of 70 feet and by 10 feet. So it would really just give us the option of applying this where it's warranted, where right now we don't really have that flexibility. The planning board voted in favor of the request unanimously, and staff is also recommends approval of the request. And you have a statement of plan consistency and reasonableness included within your ordinance for adoption. I'll be happy to take any questions you may have, and we do also have a representative of the applicant, Stephen Jackson, here if there's any questions of Newland.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bergmark? Gentlemen? Public hearing is now open. If anyone wishes to speak for or against the adoption of this amendment to the UDO, can you step forward? Okay. Public hearing is closed.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed text amendments as it relates to site triangles in the UDO.
Does the language need to state we're adopting the ordinance, Mr. Cawley, or does it matter of the motion?
That'd be preferable.
Okay. So can you restate your motion that we want to adopt the ordinance?
Mm-hmm. I make a motion that we adopt the ordinance
To amend Chapter 9. Here it is.
to amend Chapter 9 as it relates to site triangle standards.
Yep.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So we have a motion to adopt the ordinance to amend Chapter 9 of the UDO as it relates to site triangle requirements. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right. Item number 10 is a quasi-judicial public hearing to consider special use request by Thomas H. Johnson on behalf of Nexon Pruitt to permit a cell tower to be located on Poinsettia Lane. Mr. Bergmark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is our third public hearing tonight. This one is quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing to consider a request to construct a new cell tower off Poinsettia Lane. And as stated, the applicant in this case is Thomas H. Johnson on behalf of Nexon Pruitt. And tonight you're being asked to hold the public hearing and take action. And since this is quasi-judicial, we will need to swear in those who are prepared to speak for the public hearing.
Right.
The applicant submitted this request, again, to locate along Poncetta Lane. And this is allowed through Appendix D of our UDO for them to submit this proposal, which does our telecommunication appendix ordinance. This property is currently vacant, located within the town's ETJ. And per Appendix D of the UDO, all new cell towers are required to go through a special use permit approval process. The applicant's proposing to construct a 175-foot tall monopole cell tower with a 4-foot lightning rod, totaling 179 feet in height. If the application is approved as proposed, the new tower would be capable of supporting at least 4 telecommunication carriers. You have the applicant's justification and special use permit responses included within attachment B of your report. These speak to how the proposed tower would impact adjacent properties, as well as what type of services this use may require. And they're really general responses for any use. So any special use has to answer the same questions, so they're not, those ones aren't really cell tower specific. As permitted, in Appendix D, the applicant has submitted a waiver request to permit a tower that's in excess of the 120 feet, which is what's typically allowed in a residential district. The UDO permits the town board to approve such a waiver request so long as it finds that the applicant has provided such technical information or other justifications as are necessary to document the need for the additional height to the satisfaction of this board. So the applicant has provided some technical information to support that waiver request, which is included as an attachment D of your report for the additional height. The town's wireless review consultant, Cityscape, has reviewed that material and is in support of the requested height waiver. If the town board approves the special use request, including that waiver request to go up to 175 feet, then Cityscape recommends that specific language kind of accompany that approval. And so you have this included within your report. We just want to make sure if this is approved that part of the motion including the language provided by Cityscape, which speaks to its location within an RA zone that's largely undeveloped. The majority of any residential development would happen after the cell tower was already in place. And looking at the elevations in place, as well as the coverage maps that were provided and documenting the clear, gap in cell tower coverage in that area. So here you have kind of shown the location of it. You have US 64 on the left. You see Wendell Boulevard kind of going kind of southeast on that. So this would be kind of running roughly parallel to the new Wendell Valley Boulevard that's just starting to be constructed. So as stated, this is in the ETJ. It was in the area that got added in 2012 when we were trying to kind of fill the gap between Wendell Falls and our ETJ that was in place at the time. As required by our Appendix D, a balloon test was performed on Monday, August 21st. Abutting property owners within 400 feet of the property were notified of the date and time. An ad was placed in Eastwick News, and the results of that balloon test showed that the proposed tower would be visible from Wendell Falls Parkway, Wendell Valley Boulevard, and select portions of Knightdale Eagle Rock Road, but it did not show evidence of the tower being visible from US 64 or from Martin Pond Road. All this is just what I did want to note, that as more development occurs, more trees would obviously come down. That could change the visibility, because right now it's largely wooded through much of this. You can see here on the existing zoning map, everything in orange shows the Wendell Falls PUD. So this is just on the border, just outside of the Wendell Falls PUD, and that lighter green shade that it falls within is within our residential agricultural zoning district, which is often used as a holding zone until we know really exactly how that would be developed. I did want to note that per the UDO, the structure has to be set back from all property lines at a minimum, a distance equal to its engineered fall zone. So it's generally not a set, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 175 feet back, as long as it's designed to kind of fall in and on itself, as is common now. Water and sewer wouldn't really be required for this site. In terms of buffering, UDO would require a minimum type B buffer. They're looking to use existing vegetation. We did note that they didn't have quite enough room on the northern side to allow that 20-foot, so the site would have to be shifted down slightly to the south, not a lot, but a little bit. And this was noted in Cityscape's review as well, which is attachment F. Additionally, they're showing a fence with a barbed wire along the top. Section 4.5 of the UDO would not permit barbed wire, so we would want them to modify their request to be in conformance with Section 4.5 of the UDO. In terms of staff comments, for any special use, there are certain requirements for granting a special use. You have it contained in attachment A, just for your reference during your deliberations. If you do choose to approve this request, again, a site plan will still be reviewed, just like any other site plan, by the town staff to make sure it's in conformance, and by Wake County to ensure compliance with the building code. The only required changes noted by staff to date deals with the fence type and the buffering along that northern boundary. So staff recommends that any motion for approval include incorporation of the height justification language provided by Cityscape, compliance with Cityscape's recommended conditions for approval, so they had some additional notes in attachment F, which is page 6 of that. And finally, that the site plan be revised to comply with the town's fencing and buffer requirements. We do have, on behalf of the applicant, Tom Johnson here, representing the applicant, and we also have Susan Raybolt representing Cityscape, which is our cell tower consultant.
Okay. Mr. Colley, do you want to go over the rules of procedure for this kind of thing real quick?
I'll be glad to.
Okay.
As a quasi-judicial proceeding, the process is a bit different than your typical legislative review process. With a quasi-judicial proceeding, if the application meets the requirements of the ordinance, it is to be allowed. You don't have the same legislative discretion that you do with rezonings. It is intended to be a hearing process where you make your decision based only on the evidence presented at the hearing, not on information obtained outside of the hearing. There's an opportunity to present evidence by the applicant and by anyone opposed, opportunity to examine witnesses and to cross-examine witnesses. The process itself for approval of cell towers was changed 3 or 4 years ago, and the statute limits council review to matters related to public safety, land development, or zoning issues, including landscaping, land use-based location priorities, structural design, setbacks and fall zones, which are matters within the expertise of your cell tower consultant. So I would refer you to their information that was provided to you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Clerk, can you provide the oath for anybody presenting testimony?
If anyone is speaking on the side of you, need to come forward so you can be sworn in. Okay, so lay your left, raise your right. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you will provide for this case is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Thank you.
Would you like to start with the applicant?
Sure, yes.
Do you want me to bring up your...
Not right now, but if I need it, I will. Good evening, I'm Tom Johnson. I'm with the law firm of Nex and Pruitt at 4141 Park Lake Avenue, Suite 200 in Raleigh. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, TowerCom, who will be building this tower for the use of the initial tenant being Verizon, which is the documentation that was included in the information that's been submitted. I do ask that the application and the associated documentation that staff reviewed and your consultant reviewed be admitted into evidence in support of the application. And I will note that we do
concur with the conditions that staff has listed. I would point out one thing, there was never an intention to produce a buffer under 20 feet on any side. And when I went back and looked at the plans today, I think it's a scaling error as opposed to anything when I looked at the plans. But we'll make sure we have the 20 feet around and remove the barbed wire. That is no problem. We also, again, accept all the conditions, and we do concur with the recommendations of Cityscape, your consultant, as well as the staff report and what's been suggested to be incorporated in the decision. I do have with me several witnesses that can speak and answer any questions you may have. I'm not sure that will be necessary because of the documentation that's already been submitted, but they are here and available to answer any questions that you may have. And I'm available at this point to answer any questions that you may have with respect to the application or any of the documents you reviewed as part of your packet of information.
I have a structural design question.
Okay.
What's the fall zone for this tower?
The fall zone, it'll be constructed to fall within the property in which it's located. So it'll have what is suggested by Cityscape, have breakpoint technology, so it'll fall within the property as required by your ordinance.
So if it were to fall over, it would not fall outside of the property line?
That's correct. When you say breakpoint technology, what that means is it's not a weak point as far as being weak being less than building code, but there'll be a point at the tower that if it were to reach its structural limitations by virtue of a weather event or some other event, that the tower would fold over, so it's not going to fall flat, it will fold over so it'll stay within the site. And that's what that means. And George Davis can speak to that. He's the tower company owner if he...
One quick thing on that, and might be different from other towers that you've seen before this board. As part of this project, we have elected to purchase the entire parcel where the site is located. So it's not a leasehold interest. We will be purchasing the entire property. And as Tom mentioned, the breakpoint technology or the fall zone will be designed to meet the minimum of the distances to adjoining property lines, which I believe, looking at the site plan, is 113 feet. Which is a very reasonable fall zone for a 175-foot tower. We've designed them down to 40 or 50% of the tower height. So 113 feet or thereabouts is well within the ability to design the tower and have it have a fail point that would contain the site completely within the bounds of the property, which again, we have no plans to develop. It's a little over 3 acres, and we just worked it out with the property to purchase it instead of lease it.
Sir, would you identify yourself for the clerk?
Yeah, yes, sir. George Davis, in 315 Waycroft Grant Drive, Cary, North Carolina.
Thank you. And say who you're with.
I'm representing TowerCom.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Of course, if anybody else wants to speak, we reserve the right for rebuttal, but
Sure,
we'll
yeah.
just see how the public hearing goes.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Well, you know, you weren't sworn in.
Not sworn in.
You weren't sworn.
We can,
Okay.
Swear him in.
Swear him in.
Swear him in.
so swear.
Raise your left, raise your right. And do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Okay, can you state your name for the record and get to the podium?
Sure. Yes, my name is Kenneth Hall, and I represent the adjacent property, the heirs of Jesse Hall Jr. And my question, I just had a simple question, was what is the impact on the adjacent properties as far as development and the financial impact?
And I appreciate that question. As part of the record, we submitted an impact study by an appraiser who concluded that there would be no impact. And Mr. Smith, the appraiser, is here and available if you know, I could be happy to have him speak to the conclusions in his report. But that was submitted and as part of the application.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Mr. Hall,
Thank you very much.
property you're referring to there?
Correct, right, be to the right of your tower.
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
there anyone else? Okay. Mr. Bergmark, do you have any closing comments, or you, the applicant, have any closing comments?
Only again, a reminder that if there is a motion for approval to include those 3 points that are on the bottom of your screen there, incorporation of those 3 items.
Okay. Yeah, you can.
I just have a question. In regards to the tower height, and I might have misunderstood this in the, my packet of information, but going from the 120 to the 175 is what y'all were requesting, is kind of the extra, I guess. As far as the range of coverage, how much extra, or what would you be missing by not going for the 175?
There were several areas I can pull up.
I guess I was looking for maybe like a map or, you know.
Yeah,
I'm
I
a
can do
visual
that.
person.
I've got that in my presentation that I had, just it's a slide that I have, and let me get to that slide. These are the areas that would be lost, the ones encircled in yellow would be lost at the shorter height. And specifically, it's because of terrain and dense vegetation. There'll be several areas of degraded signal. That would be the Highway 64 bypass connection east of the site with Pulley and Raleigh East Airport. The Highway 64 bypass connection, west connection with the site at Smithfield Road, so there would be a gap between that existing site and this one. And then Nightdale, Eagle Rock, and Martin Pond roads would experience loss in service that they would not otherwise get from the 175-foot tower. It just covers a lot shorter distance, and the goal is to cover these areas that are in light blue to make sure that the green's there. And I can go back to this one, which shows the difference right here. This is at 170. Well, we say 170, that's the center line of the antennas. It's still a 175-foot tower. But you can see the difference between that and this, and what you lose.
Okay.
We're trying to connect up with the adjoining sites, and really all the adjoining sites are in excess of 170 feet, so
Okay.
it's consistent with the other tower sites that Verizon's located in the area.
Thank you.
You're certainly welcome.
Any other questions from the board?
And I do want to make sure we concur with all of those points that were indicated by Mr. Bergermark as having to be included in the motion, and we concur with that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, what's y'all's pleasure?
Wait for him to get that slide back. Mr. Burmark, you put that slide back up there, then I can. Yep.
Staff comment. Recommendation. There you go.
Madam Mayor, I'm gonna make a motion. I guess a motion is to approve the special use permit to locate the cell tower on Poinsettia Lane, and then including the incorporation of the height justification language provided by the town cell tower consultant, and compliance with the state's recommended conditions for approval, and then the revision of the site plan to comply with the town's fencing and buffer requirements.
Okay. We have a motion for approval with those 3 extra things added on about the height, the compliance with Cityscape's recommendation, and the compliance with buffering and fencing. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I couldn't quite hear. No? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Item number 11 is the continuation of a public hearing from the October 9th, 2017 meeting of an application by the Greater North Carolina Jurisdiction Church of God in Christ to amend a CMX conditional district located at 1609 Wendell Boulevard. Mr. Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. The Board of Commissioners is asked to continue the public hearing, discuss, and take action on the amended conditional district request. Since the October 9th public hearing, There were concerns raised by the adjoining property owners and commissioners regarding proximity of the units to the adjacent properties, the additional height of the apartment buildings from 3 to 4 stories from the original plan, and the funding of the project to allow for affordable income tax credit development. On October 25th, the applicant, town staff, the town's engineer, Mayor Gray, and Commissioner Joyner all met to discuss the concerns that were raised at the public hearing. Commissioner Joyner indicated that he had attended meetings with the Edgemont Landing Homeowners Association, that they had expressed the same concerns from the public hearing. The applicant was upfront that no affordable housing income tax credits would be used as a funding source, as agreed to adding that as a condition, removing that as an allowable funding source. The consultant for the applicant stated that they expect the investment of the development cost to be between $60 and $80 million for the site improvements and construction. This proposed condition will ensure that the full taxable amount will be received by the town of Wendell, as any other typical project would provide. It should also be noted that the increase in height for the senior apartments from 3 stories to 4 stories is allowed in the CMX zoning district, which is actually 1 less story than the 5 allowed in that district. The applicant has also indicated that based on the topography of the site in relation to Edgemont Landing, that the apartments would be lower in elevation and have a appearance of actually only 3 stories from the view of the backyards of those residents that back up to it. The applicant has revised the proposed plan to include the following changes from the plan shown at the October 9th meeting. They increased the buffer yard from 10 feet wide to 25 feet wide in more areas along that northern property line. They did a reconfiguration of the quadruplex units in the northeast corner of the site, which pushes them slightly further away from those adjacent properties. And they did a reconfiguration of the drive aisle for the apartments and healthcare building to remove the amount of paving along that property line. Here you can see the revised site plan. There's the traffic circle that they've put in for that driveway to help push back some of the pavement. These units have been reworked, and this one is now a little bit further away as well. And then they did provide the measurements from the property line to the nearest building. So over here at the west end, you've got 49 feet to the closest point to the property line. Over here at the healthcare complex, you've got 113 feet. The nearest point of the apartment building is 62 feet. This quadruplex is 31 feet, and this one is 36 feet. Under just the regular UDO zoning for CMX for multifamily buildings, which is what the quadruplex fall under, there's actually a 0 setback, but there is a 10-foot buffer required. So they are providing over 3 times the amount of distance as required if they were just coming in under their UDO. Here is the illustration showing the property line in relation to the senior apartments. The view is shown above as if you were kind of in the middle of that courtyard looking sideways. So you've got the buffer, drive aisle, the roundabout, and then the building, and you can see that the topography starts to dip off about halfway through that building, making it almost like it's a walkout basement of sorts. And then you've got the stream through there. The proposed amendments, just going back to what we brought up at the last public hearing, was the changes from the 2016 conditional district approval, is the increase in the total number of residential units from 202 to 300. That's removing the 26 single-family lots, increasing the number of townhouse units from 36 to 44, and designing them as 2-story quadruplexes rather than duplexes, increasing the number of independent senior apartments from 40 units to 184, which are 2 4-story buildings with 92 apartments each, and then decreasing the number of assisted living units from 100 to 74, with 46 initial beds and the ability to add another 28. They have the open space dedication is changing from 4.39 acres of required and 3.94 acres of dedication. Sorry, I have those backwards. To 3.94 acres required and 4.55 acres of dedication. So they've actually increased their dedication, and that coincides with the recent text amendment that we did for the open space requirements. They've changed the 6,250 square foot meeting facility to a 45,000 square foot clubhouse with kitchen dining facilities, recreational space, meeting rooms, a health clinic, and administrative offices. These are the conditions that were brought up at the last meeting, and I'll only go through the ones that changed since the public hearing was first held. In condition 3, we just specified that this is developed as age restricted for 55 years and older, so they'll still have to submit their restrictive covenants verifying that, but we just wanted to point that out in the condition that it's 55 years and older. And then we did have 3 other conditions since the original approval that staff is recommending. The first is that all cluster mailbox units shall be incorporated into the interior of the buildings or provide overhead shelter to protect residents from rain, snow, and wind. Staff feels that since this is a community developed for older citizens, that having them out of the elements would provide better safety for them. The planning board accepted staff's proposed condition, and the applicant did as well. The next condition is that no funding mechanisms shall be used which would reduce the amount of property taxes collected by the town of Wendell, specifically affordable housing tax credits. At the October 9th public hearing, the applicant was asked about tax credit funding for the project. The applicant was non-committal at the hearing regarding the funding for the project, but at the October 25th meeting with the applicant and the mayor, Commissioner Joyner, and staff, the applicant proffered that this condition to alleviate any concerns about the desire not to use affordable income housing tax credits. This condition was added after the planning board meeting made their recommendation. The next condition is related to traffic and the TIA that was submitted. If land uses exceed 3,000 total daily trips and or AM or PM trips by 10% or greater, the traffic impact analysis shall be revised. The trips for this out parcel land uses were generated using retail for that front commercial piece, which would be a shopping center. The study states that this is a higher generator than other uses that have been considered for the site. However, the study does not state what other uses are considered for the site. If the eventual land use exceeded the 3,000 total daily trips or the AM or PM trips by 10%, we would require that TIA be revised to verify the additional improvements are not required. This was also conditioned after the planning board meeting. This is fairly typical for projects that have a TIA to put some sort of a trip cap to ensure that if something changes along the way that they don't exceed what the TIA called for. And 10% is pretty standard. And the last condition is that any landscaping removed by the developer along Wendell Boulevard for turn lanes shall be replaced along a public right-of-way within the corporate limits or ETJ of Wendell. The plan for replacing the landscaping shall be approved by the zoning administrator and NCDOT if required. In 2002, the town installed plantings along Wendell Boulevard median from Rollsville Road to Highway 97. The town has been maintaining that landscaping since 2004. The proposed left turn lane into the proposed site, as well as the proposed U-turn lane west of the site, would require most of that landscaping to be removed. This condition ensures that the significant investment made by the town would be replaced elsewhere within the community. And until the roadway improvement plans are created, it's impossible to determine if landscaping can be incorporated in the same location or if it would have to be somewhere else within the town. And this condition also was added after the planning board made their recommendation. So just to recap for everyone, the purpose of a conditional district is to establish a more complex living and working environment through the application of enlightened and imaginative approaches to community planning and property design. The CD should provide a variety of natural features and scenic areas, efficient and economical land use, improved amenities, orderly and economical development, and the protection of existing and future adjacent development. While conditional districts do allow for the applicant to ask for exemptions from certain types of standards, those exemptions are intended to be offset by other improvements which go above and beyond what's required. This process allows for creative trade-offs that can result in a better overall product than by following the strict UDO regulations. As currently proposed, the master development plan has a mixture of improvements and exemptions being sought. The proposed improvements include adding open space beyond the minimum acreage, which is 0.63 extra acres, providing a paved greenway trail through the site that connects to the other approved greenway gravel trail at Edgemont Landing, a pedestrian bridge across the stream to the 2 apartment buildings, the exclusion of undesirable uses along Wendell Boulevard, the recessed garage requirements for quadruplex or duplex development, no vinyl material allowed on any of the multifamily products, wider streets through the commercial and senior housing tracts, safer pedestrian crossings, and the reduced height of the apartment buildings to 4 stories as opposed to the 5 allowed by the UDO in the CMX zone. The applicant's only seeking 3 exemptions, which is 1, to remove the SUP approval requirement for multifamily, since this is essentially superseding that and replaces it, a longer time frame to obtain construction permits for 1 extra year, and reducing some of the multifamily design standards such as no raised elevations, the roof pitch, required porches and stoops due to this being an elderly resident community. There were a few additional site plan conditions which carried over from the previous time. Those are more technical in nature and don't actually impact the plan itself. It's just kind of cleaning house a little bit on the plan to make sure it meets the requirements. I did want to point out that there is one that was added, which is to revise the TIA as proposed by our engineer, A. Morton Thomas, which was, they gave their comments on 10/26, which was included in the agenda packet. All these proposed changes are technical in nature and are items that are required on any site plan. Just wanted to hit on the streets since we had some changes since the last hearing because of the TIA. Just wanted to point out that as recommended in Condition 2, the improvements for the frontage of Tract A along Wendell Boulevard shall be constructed at the time of the first development plan, which was including the sidewalk in front of the church. Condition 16 requires the developer to replace any plantings in Wendell Boulevard median that are removed due to the turn lane improvements. NCDOT has stated that a left turn lane on Wendell Boulevard may be allowed. They've also indicated that deceleration and acceleration lanes may be requested on the westbound lanes. The exact timing and design for those improvements will be determined by NCDOT at the time of the final development plan. The TIA is required for this project based on the number of multifamily units being provided. The draft TIA was provided on October 2nd to staff. However, we did not have an opportunity to thoroughly vet that before the October 9th public hearing, which is why it was continued. On October 18th, the final TIA was submitted to staff, the town's engineer, and NCDOT. AMT provided comments on the 26th of October, which is attachment C of your packet. Most of the comments were related to the methodology of the TIA, but none of the recommended changes by AMT are expected to change the recommendations found on page 33 of the TIA. The improvements are on US 64 Business and the site drive to provide a site access via left-over intersection. The site drive currently exists with 1 ingress lane and 1 egress lane to provide stop control for the site drive as you come to Wendell Boulevard, to provide an exclusive westbound right turn lane on US 64 with 75 feet of storage and appropriate taper, and to provide an exclusive eastbound left turn lane on US 64 Business with 125 feet of storage and appropriate taper. And then it also calls for U-turn just west of this site, kind of before you hit Buffalo Creek, with 100 feet of storage and the appropriate taper. Here you can see the visual of what I just said. So you've got the site here, you've got Wendell Boulevard here, and 97 here, and Edgemont Road right here, showing for that right turn lane out of the site, the right turn lane into the site, the left turn lane from Wendell Boulevard into the site, and then down you've got the U-turn that if somebody wanted to come towards downtown Wendell from this site or Edgemont Landing, they could come through the site drive, go down Wendell Boulevard slightly, and make a U-turn to head back towards downtown. Also, there's a need for a statement of plan consistency and reasonableness. Any recommended change to the zoning map must be accompanied by the statement explaining how the change is consistent with the comprehensive plan and reasonable nature. At their September 18th meeting, the Planning Board recommended the following statement: that the proposed conditional district is found to be consistent with the recommended land uses and development types outlined in the Wendell Comprehensive Land Use Plan for the S5 sector. Staff recommends approval of the amended condition for Greater North Carolina Jurisdiction Church of God in Christ with the 16 conditions with 2 minor modifications as recommended by staff for conditions 8 and 10 to reflect the new housing types. We have tonight with us Sam McDonald with AMT, if he could answer any questions about the TIA, as well as the Steve Janowski with Rivers Associates, who's the engineer for the applicant, as well as the rest of their team.
Do any of them have anything they'd like to add at this time?
I just wanted to just show who the team is today. We've got
Okay.
Bishop Woolard with the jurisdiction, got Superintendent Parker, Superintendent White. We've got Bill Sears, the architect, Sharon Rue is the landscape architect, and we have Andy Archer, our traffic engineer, and project manager for the project. So we're positioned, any questions you would have, we're happy to answer them.
John, do you want to have a question?
I have a question for the traffic engineer.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I know you probably didn't expect it.
Could you let him identify himself?
Oh, go ahead.
What's your name, please?
My name is Andy Archer. I'm with Ramey Kemp and Associates out of Raleigh. I'm a licensed civil engineer in the state of North Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, this being an age-restricted community, and its location along a major thoroughfare, it's possible that there may be some need in the future for some sort of mass transit stop, or like a bus stop or something like that, perhaps along Wendell Boulevard. If that was to be done, would the current, I believe the term that was used was storage, 75 feet of storage in the turn lane, would that be enough to provide an adequate bus stop to get it out of the travel lane if that were to be something that were coming in the future?
You caught me off guard with that one. Mass transit is, bus stop design's not exactly my wheelhouse. I will say that 75 feet is adequate for a bus to store. The question that kind of really, the backwards way to look at the question is, would you want the bus stop in the turn lane? And I would hazard to guess that you probably wouldn't, that you would, the transit service would most likely like to move that bus stop up or down the road a little bit to get it out of that turn lane, so it wouldn't be conflicting with that turn traffic. One of the main components of having a turn lane is to get that traffic that's slowing down to enter the site, give them room to get out of the way of the through traffic. So the through traffic operates more efficiently, and there's the reduced likelihood of a collision from someone rear-ending that person. If you had a bus stop in that turn lane, all of a sudden you've taken a substantial amount of that area away, and you've also reduced the visibility for anybody waiting to turn out of the site from having that large vehicle there. So a direct answer to your question would be, yes, you could adequately stop a bus in that area to load and unload passengers, but I would caveat that with, I don't know that that would be the preferred methodology for the transit service. So I think I successfully managed to not answer your question.
I think you did an excellent job, thank you. So, but basically what you're saying is that if you were trying to design it so that if in the future a bus stop could be easily added, it would take more than what is currently here. You would want to add another wider shoulder on the far side or something different than that?
I would suspect that the person who's, whatever the transit department is and whoever's purview that would fall under, whether it be a local ordinance or a policy they have, I would suspect that they would want to handle it differently. In my experience, I don't see a reason why you could not put it there, but I don't know that that would be your first choice.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant or their team?
I've got one for the same fellow. While you're up here, could you explain to everyone the purpose for the or the U-turn spot on 64 versus just having them come in and out of the same cut through in the median?
So the concept that you're seeing is we generally call it a leftover. And thank you for moving the figure there, whoever did that. It's a configuration we're seeing more and more. It goes along with the, I guess they're calling it a synchronized street concept now. And what it enables you to do is you're allowing that left turn into the site to continue, because they're only dealing with one direction of traffic at that point. By splitting the movement into a right turn and then a U-turn, you're reducing when you make the right turn, you're only concerning with the traffic coming from your left. You don't have to wait for both left and right to clear to allow you to make that move. You also don't have to worry about people turning left into the site. There shouldn't be any conflicts there. So you make your right turn only having to deal with one, you travel a distance, and then you get to your U-turn, and it's the same situation in reverse. You're only worried about the traffic coming from your right. You don't have to wait for the C's to part, so to speak. So it, in theory, can be more efficient. It also, in the industry, we have something that we look at called conflict points, which is where traffic turning or going through intersects the path of traffic turning or going through. And it greatly reduces the number of conflict points that you have. So in theory, that can parlay into reduced risk of accident.
Any other questions?
Questions for our staff?
For the
Mr. Reedy?
Patrick?
Sorry, I practically moved in up here.
Yes.
So I want to clarify earlier too that I walked in about what I would guesstimate to be about halfway through that meeting. I was caught off guard by that meeting. So I want to convey some of my questions that maybe I missed then. What portions of this project could be built by right in the CMX district?
So the multifamily use, which is what all this is now, it complies with everything in the UDO right now. The only thing that it does not comply with is it does require a special use permit, which the applicant chose to go through the conditional district for the couple little exemptions rather than the SUP. The conditional district process wasn't a requirement. They found that doing the rezoning and the site planning at the same time, and mostly doing away with the elevation steps to get into the units was beneficial for them, and they could lay out their site plans. So they could go through that quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing of a special use permit. The attorney would probably find that at that point, just like the cell tower, if you meet the ordinance, you're pretty much locked into having to approve it unless you can find a couple conditions that would be, you could attach to certain concerns.
And I'm being completely hypothetical here, but just trying to understand the various routes that this project could take. So if this conditional district went away, nothing prohibits the applicant for coming back with a special use permit tomorrow.
No, because that's a separate process.
And then that would go through the quasi-judicial process that we just saw earlier this evening.
Correct, and that would...
And it's your opinion that currently they meet all of the pieces of the UDO?
Yeah, they meet the height, they meet setbacks, they meet buffering. Looking at it for several months I haven't found anything outside of the few things that we are granting as an exemption that they wouldn't comply with.
I noticed that there's a two definitive pieces in there. One saying that the tax would be paid to the town and there'd be no, and a second being that no tax credits would be used in the funding of this project in any way, and they've actually made that a condition of the whole
Yeah,
plan.
we targeted the affordable housing income tax credit that we've seen before you guys in the past, that you guys have denied, and brought that up as a historical concern for the town because of the high percentage that we have compared to the rest of Wake County. So there's so many different funding mechanisms out there. There's no way to fully ensure that there's not some sort of a federal tax credit or something, but with the condition, it does lock in that the town of Wendell would receive its full amount.
I think that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions from y'all?
I don't know that this is for Patrick, maybe for the representative of the owner, but someone needs to confirm that the conditions represented by or requested by staff are acceptable to the applicant.
I believe I can speak for the jurisdiction. Yes, they are acceptable. I've been working with them almost 3 years now. Their hands have been open this way. This has never been an issue of low-income housing, and their attitude and the idea for this is a project of excellence. We've started with that from the very beginning. We've got some interesting history that would even confirm and back that up even more so. But this is what Patrick has put together in wordsmith, or staff has put together in wordsmith, that we're in total agreement with.
Well, I asked the question because under the statute, with a conditional district rezoning, the board can approve it or deny it, but if they condition it, they can only impose mutually agreeable conditions.
Very good.
That's the reason for the question.
And the jurisdiction would agree.
Thank you.
Okay, so no further questions right now from the board? Okay. This public hearing is now open. Citizens who wish to speak can come forward. Anyone who speaks, I'll just go ahead and tell you while you're making your way up there, you get 5 minutes to speak. And when you start, state your name, a green light will come on. When you've got a few seconds left, it'll turn yellow, and then it'll turn red to remind you that your time has expired. So,
okay.
Thank you.
My name's Lance Lee. I live at 5917 Sandpiper Farm Lane in Edgemont Landing. Lived there about just over 9 years. And I want to start by saying that I'm not against development in this area. I am against this development in this area. Several years ago, we were presented with a completely different plan. This was dropped on us about a month ago. It affects 2 direct properties, so those were the 2 properties that were notified of the hearing at all. Luckily, one of those property owners is very vocal, so he let the entire neighborhood know about it, and then we got involved. A couple of us showed up last hearing, but many of us weren't made aware of it in time to get here. So we have a select few of us here, probably about 10 to a dozen residents. I don't know that we'll all speak. Hopefully not. It's getting late. You know, the original plan that we had issues with were kind of worked out a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. Then this new plan came out that involved a 4-story apartment building. Well, let me back up. The first one was all single-family homes and a couple duplexes. The developers went to quadruplexes and a 4-story apartment building. That's not really what we had envisioned at looking at when we exited our community. We were sold on single-family homes. It looked a lot like what we live in. It was a smooth transition from one property into the next, and this is completely different. I know they said the elevation is going to look like a 3-story building or a 2-story building, but it's still an apartment building, and that's not what we as Edgemont Landing residents really signed up to look at. I'm probably one of the only few that read the 30-page TIA today. They did reference a little bit about Edgemont Landing residents using that exit to get onto 64 as an easier way to go onto 64. Unless I missed it, they really didn't reference anyone that not using the U-turn lane that you discussed earlier, but coming through our neighborhood to get onto Edgemont Road to go north, I think, to take a left onto Edgemont, or to come down to get to 97 to go towards Zebulon, or to come down to get on 97 to get a left on Nightdale Boulevard or Wendell Boulevard to go towards town. So I don't think that was referenced at all. If it is, I completely missed it. So I think there's some more discussion that needs to be involved. Obviously, there's a revised, amended plan, and that's because we, as a community, have gotten together and have expressed our concern about the second plan. Now we have a third plan. We haven't seen it. I can barely see that without my glasses. So I appreciate the fact that they're making some more buffers and more, making an attempt. But, I think if a 4-story apartment building looks like a 2-story apartment building, a 2-story apartment building would look like it wasn't there from our properties. So, again, I'm not totally against development. I don't want to be a dissenter in any way. I'm just not happy with the plan currently. This is the second plan, and now we have a third one that I really haven't seen, can't see from here. So if the developer really wanted to get with our neighborhood and find out our concerns, that should have happened. They didn't do that. The owners of the property, the church, made no attempt to contact anybody. I'm the vice president of the HOA. I've been there. I've been in the HOA for at least 5 years. Seems like an eternity. But there's been no communication with Edgemont Landing at all, other than one-day notice of a hearing that's involving everybody in our property values or property lines. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. I live in Edgemont Landing. I've been there roughly
Give me your name.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Johnny Evans. I live on Raven Perch. Been there roughly 15 months. I'd like to say I moved to Wendell because of this was going on all the time in the city of Raleigh. When I first got married, I lived at Hannaham. They built townhouses that was age appropriate, but could not fill them up, so they released them out to Section 8, which caused a rise of crime in our neighborhood. I worked the law enforcement for 20 years, so this is a main concern for me. Apartments change hands all the time, townhouses change hands all the time. They come and tell you something that sounds real good and sweet, but it always changes. I can understand that the church has a vision. Me being a assistant pastor myself, I can understand that, but what is good for my neighborhood? I got tired of moving from different places in Raleigh to the same situation. Crime rates shooting up, people kicking in people's doors middle of the day, and I decided to move to a smaller town where they had to have a use of force or deadly force or anyone to bring it to my house. Now, it seemed like it's a recurrent situation. I'm for change, but it got to be the right change. I don't mind driving 5 miles either way to go to a grocery store. I like the small, simple living. My kids love it here. I can breathe. I can sit on my porch. I can relax. So my main concern is also people coming through Edgemont Landing to go through there, what kind of traffic that would bring. Our problem at Edgemont Landing is no matter what school you go to, there's only one bus stop. So no matter elementary, middle school, high school, so kids throughout the whole neighborhood got to walk to one bus stop. With increased traffic, you are endangering the lives of the children. This time of morning, my son leaves at 6:30 to go to the bus stop. It's still dark. I don't need no maniac try to find somewhere, drive up and down, hit my child. So my main concern is crime rate and what it would do to my property value. I had seen my property value, my last house, across the street from Highway Patrol. I was there 9 years, and the value went up $500 because of the crime. When they did apartments, when they did shopping centers, it brought in crime. Nobody wants to stay in the area, especially I'm paying almost $300,000 for a house in the crime area. So my main concern is crime, the safety of the kids, and can they guarantee that these apartments will stay age appropriate? People build apartments, they want to make money. If I can't fiddle with them people, I fiddle with who I got to fiddle with. Maybe I can sell it, and I have seen this over and over again. So my heart and mind telling me it's a good plan, but it'll go end bad. And this is how I feel about it. And I says hope that y'all, make a great decision because we got a wonderful neighborhood, and I hate to see it go down. And I'd rather for people to say why I moved to Wendell instead of say why I moved from Wendell. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dare Robertson. I also live in the Edgemont Landing community. I too moved from Hedingham for the same reasons as my fellow neighbor has shared. I was there, loved the community, and then as the townhomes and the apartment complexes started getting built, the small community feel started to go down. And so about 10 years ago, I found myself married and pregnant, and I wanted a small community that I could raise my child in. And we looked in a lot of different places. We looked in Knightdale, we looked in Wake Forest, we looked all over. And we settled on Wendell for a couple of reasons. It was a beautiful small town that had charm. It had the possibility of growth. There were a lot of young single families moving to Wendell to start their families. And it was the place that I wanted to call home. And so we found Edgemont Landing and decided to build there and make that our home. I now have a 9-year-old child that rides his bike, and as much as a stern mom can say, make sure you're always on the sidewalk, we all know that that's not always going to happen. And, I appreciate the traffic study that was done. However, I don't think it was adequately done to account for the extra 200 homes that are already coming into Edgemont Landing. I don't think that it was done to account for the additional traffic coming in and out of Edgemont Landing if this plan is approved. We already had a child lose his life on Edgemont Road just a few short years ago. And additional traffic brings that additional risk. And it's not one that I'm willing to take. The kids in our community all play. They all play in the streets as much as we tell them not to. And adding that additional traffic is just a recipe for disaster. I am a small business owner in the community. This is what I call home. This is where I want to grow my family. This is where I would love to eventually retire to one day. I don't want to look out my window and see an apartment parking lot. And the view out my window with this plan will be light towers, lighting a parking lot, and parking lots, and apartment buildings. And if that's what I wanted when I decided to move my family here, then I would have stayed where I was, or I would have gone to Knightdale, or I would have gone to Wake Forest. I moved to Wendell for the reasons that I shared with you and that I told you. And I'm completely against this plan. The first plan that was proposed, I had some issues with it first. Those got addressed very quickly, and I appreciate them addressing those and making those changes, and thought we were good to go. It was going to grow our current community. It was going to add on to the single-family homes in our community. And then it changed to Plan 2 and then Plan 3. I asked that we go back to Plan 1. Plan 1 was a better fit to grow our community. I'll leave you with this. I talked to several friends of mine that are real estate agents and just asked them, hey, what is this going to do to the property values in our house? And the question got turned back to me of, do you want to buy in a home? Do you want to buy a home in a neighborhood with apartment complexes where you have to worry about how much traffic is coming in and out of your neighborhood? Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Hello, Frank Basha, Cooper Salt Trail. I'm one of the homes right behind the building. I just want to say, I know we need homes in Wendell, because the more homes we get, we'll get better stores, it needs to grow. And I never expected to have those woods behind me forever. You know, I always figured there'd be a house or two behind me, just not a quadruplex. And the first plan seemed nice, and we're like, okay, that would be good. But now with these big buildings, it just seems too ambitious. You know, everybody kind of forgets how everything crashed just 10 years ago, not even. And if something like this starts and falls apart, it's just going to be a disaster for Edgemont Landing. Everybody else kind of covered all my other points. That's all I'm saying. You know, we know somebody's going to be there, and the first place seemed to just be like a nice blend of what we already have. To start putting these big buildings in, and it just, I think it's going to ruin Edgemont Landing and the surrounding area. That's all. Thank you.
My name is Luke Duggins. I'm the Edgemont Landing HOA president, and I also live on Cooper's Hawk Trail. I actually live across the street from Mr. Frank there. Out my front door, I would see these same buildings. You've heard my neighbors, my friends, my people in the community talk, and I've heard them too. We had a community meeting a few weeks back that we talked about this, and these same issues were stressed by many of the residents in my community. Also, we went door to door and talked to folks, and no one seemed to be really happy about this. I wish they all could have came tonight, but unfortunately they have work schedules and kids to put in bed and things like that, so totally understand that. But I'm really proud of Edgemont Landing for showing up, and I just want to echo everything that we've heard. You know, I'm really concerned about my property values. I'm really concerned about the traffic, and I'm also just really in contingence with the you know, the plan in general. So I think the first plan is the way to go. I feel like it's a continuation of our community. It blends in with the town of Wendell and adds the heads to the town. Just like for Edgemont Landing, if you're here from Edgemont Landing, you oppose this, just give me a hand. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Cooper. I live on Ravensperch Drive, and I moved here about a year and a half ago. I moved from New York City. So you know, in New York City, even though I was in a co-op, we're surrounded by buildings, you're surrounded by the airport. My son and his wife and their 5 children came down with me because I retired, and I want to come south to sit on my porch, to relax, to not to see tall buildings, not to be in the smog. I just wanted to sit back and to get the boys out of the city so that they can learn a little life other than the city. It's heartening to hear that I'm on the corner, and that's where they're tearing down from here on. So when the woods went down, my heart sank. And the first thing I said is, it's time to move. Because I enjoyed looking out at the woods. And then you had your few houses. But now, I know now that I may have to look out at apartment buildings, even though they say they're going to be short. I know my property value will go down, and as the other people have stated, they always project one thing, but if you cannot sell it, you have to sell it to whoever you can. And that's my biggest concern, and I'm just really heartbroken. And I'm hoping that it comes out for the best, and even though in the report it says it is for 55 and above, hopefully it will be that, and it works out. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
I just wanted to respond to two things that were pointed out. The original plan actually did have 2 3-story buildings on it. So this plan, you know, is going up, those 2 of those buildings are going up to 4 stories. And the other homes of Edgemont Landing, that's 150 homes that have been previously approved by the town board that are at the west end of that property. So that's how many homes are approved for the remaining part of that tract.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Reed.
Let's close the public hearing.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, public hearing's closed. All right, now, okay.
To the concern that, the conditions that are attached to this, might not withstand the property being, sold or ownership transferred, or the age restriction might be lifted or anything like that, what are the property owner's options for selling the property and, withdrawing from the conditional use, or withdrawing from any of this and allowing it to either not become market rate or not become age restricted anymore, or any of that, basically?
Okay. So, first, just to answer, it's my understanding from the applicant that the church is actually intending to lease the land to the developer and they retain ownership so that they have control over it. I could let them respond if that's still the case. But if it were approved with these zoning conditions, they're tied to the land, and the only way to remove them would be to go back before the town board to change the plan. If developed as shown, the likelihood of changing the plans, you'd be looking at probably a redevelopment of the site to justify changing the proposed conditions. We have the restrictive covenants that require it to be age 55 and older that we would review, and then those be recorded with Wake County Register of Deeds. So that's in there, and then as well as the condition about that the Wendell property would, property value would, or tax value would be in full.
And who, for lack of a better term, enforces or polices the age restriction?
So
what if we got 10 years down the road and some of the residents at Edgemont Landing said, no, there are a lot of young families living in there and it's not age restricted anymore? Who polices that?
So just to let you know, typically with a subdivision, if they don't have, either if they do or don't have an HOA, they'll have restrictive covenants, whether it's design based or maybe something about a road maintenance group if there was a private road. But what's rare in this case is that the covenants are actually tied to a zoning condition, so we can enforce those as the town. For instance, somewhere like Old Wendell that has restrictive covenants, those aren't tied to the zoning conditions, so it's a civil matter, so it's up to the residents to, hire an attorney and enforce those. So this gives...
That's not the case
That's
here.
not the case here. Those are tied to the zoning conditions, so they'd be in violation of their zoning conditions. And then we would go through our typical enforcement procedures.
And if we were to deny this request, the applicant could come back and reapply for basically the exact same project, but without a couple of the minor changes, and it would be basically approved by right. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, as currently made, they check all the boxes of the UDO minus those, steps and porches and stoops and those type of things. So, looking at the 16 conditions, the town could maybe reasonably condition probably half of those at most, and the rest of them, like the design standards, those type of things, because it's the SUP process, you couldn't work that out to be a condition of the SUP.
Other questions?
I've got comments. So I spent a fair amount of time, both at the meeting with, that was earlier mentioned here at Town Hall, as well as out in Edgemont Landing. And I understand both sides. I can completely sympathize with both sides. I would say that I think the frustration from the residents of Edgemont Landing is likely much more appropriately directed at the developer of Edgemont Landing. When they were planning this out, in the future when I buy a home, I'm going to ask, is there a CMX district directly behind your development? I know that's not something that you're mentally supposed to do, but in my mind that's the job of the developer as they're developing a community. The other piece of this is that was able to communicate some of the concerns from that HOA meeting in our meeting with the Church of God in Christ. And I was happy to see that they put conditions that are tied to the zoning that would be enforced by the town into this to say, you know, the affordable housing piece, we're addressing that, the tax piece, we're addressing that. It becomes a property rights issue at some point. And what I can say is when it comes to property rights, I'm a pretty big fan of personal property rights. But what I will say is in this case, and I've had the unique opportunity to listen and talk with both sides, is that I've met some of the best people that have some of the best vision for why they moved here and what they want to see happen on both sides. The public hearing's been closed, and I spoke briefly with some of the development team. I did not have time to catch Bishop Woolard on his way in. My request would be, and this would obviously, I will precursor this to my friends from Edgemont Landing, that this is nothing that could or should be required and nothing that they need to do. But it would be my request that 2 to maybe 3 members of the leadership of the HOA sit down with in the same style meeting that I sat in on a week ago or 2 weeks ago with the development team and the leadership from the church so that these questions can be asked in good faith back and forth, and so that if there is a good idea that has not yet been included, it can be offered. I in no way know what the outcome of that meeting is, but I know that the people I've met on both sides of this issue want to be good neighbors, and they want to be good neighbors for a long time. So it would be, in my opinion, a good step, since 2 weeks is not going to throw this project away. It would be a good step to have that meeting, and that's obviously if the applicant feels that they would entertain such a meeting.
I would just defer that to Superintendent Parker, Superintendent White, and Bishop Woolard, and just let them kind of confer with one another, and then and we'll follow suit with your direction.
I did want to point out that since the public hearing was closed, we would actually have to have a new public hearing to introduce any information from that meeting, as Mr. Bergmark pointed out to me.
You can move to reopen it now if that's your pleasure.
All right. Okay, make a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Motion to
Do we need a
reopen.
motion to do that? Yeah.
Motion to reopen the public hearing.
Yeah, all in favor?
All right.
All right, the public hearing's back open.
Instead of having them have to make some sort of on-the-spot decision of whether or not they'd like to meet, if we've opened the public hearing, we can move this to the next appropriate date. And if they so choose, that meeting can occur, and if not,
We'll vote next time.
we'll vote next time either way.
Okay.
So the motion to keep the public hearing open and to table this until
December, or your next meeting? 2 weeks or 4?
I would do
2 weeks.
So
November 27th. Okay, we have a motion to table this and keep the public hearing open and table this until November 27th. All in favor?
All right.
All right.
I do have a quick question for the attorney on that.
Sure.
Yes.
Is it allowable or advisable for commissioners or the mayor to be at that meeting, considering the public hearing's open? Or for any other reason?
It's allowable.
The last one, good enough for me?
This is a legislative decision.
Yeah.
Have latitude.
Okay.
Are we good?
All right.
Item number 12 is an amendment to the Town Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Sections 110 and 111. Police Chief Bill Carter.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the board. I'm coming back before you this evening to discuss the next version, if you will, of proposed amendments to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Sections 110 and 111, which are both offense-based ordinances as they relate to the provisions about possession and prohibitions against the carrying of both open and concealed carried weapons on town properties. Excuse me. October 9th, we reviewed this and had discussion and were provided some clarity from the board regarding this issue, and it was actually tabled at that time to allow us to continue to work with the board and others on a proposal that was clear while meeting the statutory requirements and the intent of the law as written. Essentially, what we've done with the version that you have before you this evening is provided the following adjustments or amendments to what you had previously reviewed. Number one would be listing as to where carrying concealed is allowed and not allowed in parks and recreation facilities, and the allowance and the addition of the allowance for those with a carry concealed access to have access, to bathroom facilities that are accessible from outside of the community center. That would be, as we stand today, that would be the restrooms on the concession stand area. I'm sure you recall, we had contacted the UNC School of Government for some guidance and advice and submitted these proposed amendments back to them on November 3rd. Professor Welty commented back. He took an opportunity to look at it and pointed out the fact that North Carolina General Statute actually requires us to say, if we specify a particular field, which is what we did here, we named the 5 fields in the ordinance that we would potentially prohibit the carrying of concealed weapons. You have to then prohibit them only when there's an organized event on those fields. So what we did with the version that you have before you tonight is actually go back over onto section 14-111, that would be 1A1, and identified the 5 fields as the Jake Mayfield, the Doug Proctor Field, for lack of a better name at this point, what we now know is Field 3, the T-ball field, and the lighted multi-purpose field. We did have to add language, and we provided you with a copy of the statute, where North Carolina General Statute 14-415.23C1 defines a recreational facility, an outside recreational facility, as an athletic field, and the prohibition can be granted provided there is a scheduled use with the municipal or county entity responsible for the operation of that building, or that recreational facility. So we've made those adjustments, and that was the number one thing that was pointed out in the version that we sent back. So again, we're trying to align ourselves correctly with the statutes, knowing that we very well could see this again. The General Assembly may have other proposed changes coming, but this would bring us, we believe, more in line with the intent of the statute, while still protecting the town and striking the right balance with regard to weapons on town properties.
Anyone have any questions for the Chief?
No, I was just going to speak to, appreciate Chief and Ms. Scoggins working on this. We've spent probably a month now, at least, going back and forth, or they going back and forth with Dr. Welty. My original concerns were that the ordinance that was brought before us last time was confusing, and it didn't set clear defined lines. This does that. You're not allowed to bring a concealed firearm inside town hall. I would imagine, generally speaking, I would assume that to be all town buildings. Just as a concealed carry holder, that's a general assumption for me. That's why that's okay with me. Chief did put in language to allow the use of the bathroom at the park, that you can use the bathroom as long as it has an exterior, which would be like our concession stands bathrooms. And the reason that we listed out the field specifically was in an attempt to try to make it more clear. Were you on the field? Were you watching the field? Previously, you could be watching the game and that be considered in violation. We tried to clean that up, and in all honesty, we could have made this a lot cleaner and a lot easier, more easy to understand, but North Carolina's general statutes just don't allow it. So I believe that this is the cleanest, and the most important thing to me is that it makes sense. No one is going to violate this and have any sort of reasonable ability to say, well, I thought you could. This is this is as black and white as we can make a really gray issue.
And I would also add, we did add language in it to properly address those fields. The vision, as far as making it clear to the end user that comes to the facilities, would be adjacent to a sign on each of those fields would be some type of signage that says exactly, pretty much verbatim what you see here, that weapons are prohibited during an organized scheduled event on this field. So we want to make, it's an effort to provide them notice and awareness and be able to ensure their self-compliance with it.
Are there any other questions or comments for the chief? Do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I can make a motion to approve the amendment to Town Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Section 110 and 111.
All right, we have a motion to approve the amendment to Town Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Sections 110 and 11. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board.
All right, item number 13 is our snapshot. Is there anything any of you would like to add, remove, adjust? Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor, it's been roughly a year since we started doing this. I think it's been very helpful, keeping us on task with some of the items that slipped through the cracks.
I agree.
I will, however, say that as much as I enjoy reading my name on things, underneath item summary, where it's listed on the agenda, we can probably remove that it was my idea from January 2017. And just sort of,
Commissioner Boyette's name.
yeah, it's not that I'm ashamed of it, I am not. Just a little more concise on
Do you
that.
think it's a group effort at this
It
point?
is a group effort at this point, so.
For that.
And there's no need to add that to the snapshot.
Add to the snapshot to remove Commissioner Boyette's name from the snapshot.
What we would be doing, Commissioner Boyette, if it is the pleasure of the board, is we would now be changing the financials based upon the audit report that we did receive.
Yeah.
Also, looking at potentially removing projects that have been completed or put in place with the bond with the blue. We do have that procedure now in place for moving forward. Painting of the bathrooms here at Town Hall has been completed. Review of the stormwater regulations, we have that, that comparison, not that we can't discuss it more, but as far as having that information, we have that and have distributed it. And also the part of project we have reviewed and have reached substantial completion. Again, not totally complete, we can leave those on there, but wanted to see, if we wanted to make room for new items to come on and take some of those that have been completed off.
Let's remove the bathroom painting at Town Hall, because that's completed.
You want to keep coffee with the cop on there?
Well, it's organized and getting ready to happen. And is there a date for the next one?
Well,
Has the calendar been established for
And
that?
we're talking about doing it once a quarter. We have not finalized it for the next year, but we are moving forward.
What do y'all want to do about the copy of the top?
Just leave it on there.
Leave it.
Okay.
I will follow up with staff in an email, regarding the stormwater, but I'd appreciate if we could leave that on there for the time being. I've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
And if I could, I know we're in the process of removing, but if I could re-emphasize the railroad tracks on Hollybrook.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to let the railroad know that they're gonna be realigning some cars if they don't get out there soon, because it's getting worse and worse. It's horrible if you're on a golf cart.
Yeah.
Oh.
And can I add to that? There's a, track maintenance vehicle that has been parked beside the railroad tracks.
I'm going up and down today. I've seen it today.
It was moving today?
It was moving, I saw
Okay,
it.
because it's been leaking grease and it's killed all the grass over there. So, is it now gone, or is it?
I saw it heading towards Bridgers, and I haven't seen it come back, but that doesn't mean it didn't come back.
Okay. It was killing everything around it.
I'll have to have an environmental impact statement now for my area cleaned up. I have a question while we're talking about the little things around town. The brick edging at the town square looks like, did it take a beating during the Harvest Festival?
Well, it has been deteriorating. One of the things that we've looked at is whether or not to do, what kind of rolled edging around it, remove that. We're probably talking about $9,000 to $10,000 to do that whole area. And we're trying to get an overview of the square. We need repairs to the, stage and those sorts of things, and try to look at it and lump it and bring it back to the board with a recommendation on what needs to be done to the square as a whole.
So the ones that have been removed, it looks like there's a lot more removed than were repaired recently, though. What happened? Did a lot of them get knocked over at the Harvest Festival? Has something happened I'm not aware of?
Not that I am aware of. What we're finding is when we looked at it, is not only the bricks, but we have gone back over the years and tried to patch. And that sub base, or that base, that concrete base that is holding those bricks is just deteriorated. And so it's no longer holding or keeping those bricks in place. And if we were going to put brick down, we're still going to have to take that out and put another concrete or base in there.
So we're no longer gonna just repair that? Is that where we are right now? We can't repair it. How are we gonna make it safe then for the Christmas event? That's what I'm thinking.
Well, I think
it's real uneven.
Right, I think we've got two choices at this point, and coming up soon, is to either remove the brick edging, in its entirety, but I believe that we would have time to get someone in here and with the cost and want to look at it comprehensively to redo all of that. But I think we could take it down. I don't think the base is solid enough for us to repair.
So are you thinking about removing the brick edging?
The brick edging, yes, ma'am.
So that's getting ready to come out?
Well, that's one of the things that we're trying to discuss, and, because we have looked at it and it cannot hold repairs. We'll definitely take a look, see what we can do between now.
It looks terrible.
We totally agree.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't want it to look like that with our holiday season coming. It looks real bad.
It does.
It would probably be my suggestion to take them away at this point. I know that it's gonna create issues with mulch flowing onto the gravel, and, I mean, it is serving a tiny purpose. I don't know. I just don't know that there's a solution that isn't gonna cost a lot of money, but I don't want anyone to fall on it either, and it's very uneven.
It is.
And it's dark down there when we do the events that we have, or dim. All right, is there anything else any of y'all have questions about?
Do what I have to do.
Item number 14, update on board committee by town board members. find my stuff here. And somebody else go while I look for it. Mayor Pro Tem Lutz, tell us about the Triangle J.
At the last Triangle J meeting, they did a recap of the regional summit that was held down in Clayton, and they were all very pleased with the success of that. And we also had a presentation by Ryan Combs, who is with the Research Triangle Regional Partnership.
Okay, thank you. I attended Campo. We approved the fiscal year 2018 North Carolina DOT Bicycle and Pedestrian Planning Grant applications. And the fiscal year 2018 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment Number 1. Received an update on potential rescission of federal funds for transportation planning. Discussed the Wake Transit Plan implementation update and cost share agreement for commuter rail, and discussed the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update.
Yeah.
So, also, I have on here the Greater Raleigh Convention and Visitors Bureau conference table that I attended. This time it was held in Cary. It was the same presentation we received here in town, actually, a week or two prior to that. The one here was more focused on Wendell. The one I went to in Cary was more of a broader umbrella, more Wake County, so it was interesting to hear all the different perspectives. And essentially, a plan for Wake County is being developed, and it's about tourism, how the outside looks in at your community or your county, and what you need to do, or maybe what you need to acquire, how you can be competitive these days, and what assets that maybe Wendell can leverage that are in Wendell or outside of Wendell to improve our tourism appearance from the outside world. Let's see, the Fire Advisory Board, Commissioner Joyner.
Fire Board met and discussed the appointment from the fire department of new officers to the board, as well as reappointing the positions within the department, and then just review the financials.
Okay, thank you. And the Technical Review Committee, Commissioner Carroll.
TRC was canceled the last meeting.
Okay. Item number 15 is Commissioners' Reports. We'll start again with Commissioner Carroll this time.
No comment.
Commissioner Lutz.
No, I guess my only comment is just honored and thankful for everybody who came out and voted and voted for me. I greatly appreciate that. It feels good to have the vote of the citizens for more years. So thank you just to everybody for that.
Okay. Commissioner Myrick.
I'd like to say congratulations to Commissioner Lutz, Commissioner Boyette, as well as Commissioner Joyner for their re-election win. I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary as commissioner, and it's been a pleasure serving with those guys, and I look forward to 2 more years. Also, if you're like me, you forgot about Thanksgiving, but it is next week, so happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
He has a new baby. We'll give you a pass. Commissioner Boyette.
When Commissioner Lutz says he'd like to thank everyone for voting for him, he literally means everyone that voted for him. I would also like to commend my compatriots here and thank everyone for coming out and voting. And I would also like to say, how about at Wolfpack again?
Barely.
Yeah,
But
well,
just as good as a mile, I say.
take it.
We'll take it, that's right. And I would like to remind everyone, item of general interest on the internet. Wendell does have a leash law. Please keep your dog on a leash. Please keep your dog inside your home or inside a fence if they're not on a leash. You can be held liable for anything that your pets do, and the leash laws are there for public safety and for a reason. And the town staff would like to do more pressing things with their time and chase down roaming dogs. So that's all I have to say about that.
Commissioner Joyner.
Echo everyone else in saying that I appreciate folks coming out and voting. It was my first time on the ballot, so having the vote was good. I appreciate everyone that was involved in that. We did come to the shocking realization right after we found out the results when someone said 4 years, and I realized there's very few things I've done in my life for 4 years, but we'll cross that bridge later. Which leads me to my next point. The staff's really going to love to hear me say this. The budget process is not that far away from starting. So if you have these grand, wonderful ideas that always seem to get brought up in like August 15th, now's the time to approach us. I've got 2 ideas that I want to incorporate into the budget this year that are going to deal with some stuff, but start bringing those ideas in now. That way, if you truly want to get it done, getting it done before the budget is written is a strong first step.
Since we last met, I attended a ribbon cutting at the Wendell Community Park for our walking trail, and essentially the part of project, which is, I don't know, probably 99% finished. I think there's a last little walkthrough that's still got to take place. I want to congratulate and thank Jeff Pulaski out there again, and the staff, and frankly the town staff. Everybody has worked on that, and it wouldn't have happened. Everyone who works for the town of Wendell has had their hand on it in some fashion, so I appreciate their help. And guess what? I can't wait to apply again. So brace yourselves for the next one. I want to remind everybody that we have a free movie night at the community center this Saturday night at 7. It's Smurfs: The Lost Village. It is it's a children's movie. It's a child's movie. Bring a chair or a blanket and enjoy that. That's a fun thing to do on a cool weekend night. I also want to mention the Trick or Treat Trail. It was wonderful this year, and I don't think we've met since we had that. And we've already discussed some things that maybe we could do for next year. I know I have some things in mind myself, for myself. And it was a wonderful event. If you hadn't been, you really should go next year. I also want to tell you that the Wendell Rams Mighty Mites are going to be facing the Durham Firebirds for the Super Bowl championship for the 2017 season. We're real proud of the little Mighty Mites. It's going to be Saturday, November 18th at about 3:30. That's not firm. They have to let the first game pass. It's going to be at Franklinton Middle School, which is at 3 North Main Street in Franklinton. Please come out and cheer on the little boys and girls. It's a fun time. The Wendell Rams are they're a wonderful thing for us to have here in Wendell. A lot of the kids that are grown now have come up through that program, and it's a wonderful program for them. And the last thing I want to remind you before we meet again, the Lake Myra Christmas light show is going to open on Wednesday, November 22nd. So that might be a fun thing to do the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. And I also want to remind you to mark your calendars for Friday, December 1st for the town's Wendell Wonderland event. Every year it gets bigger and better than it was the year before. We're going to have, the Methodist Church is going to have their cookie walk. We're going to have the Raleigh Trolley. Santa's going to be there. Food trucks. The stores are going to be open. Area churches and schools are going to have their choirs. We're going to have the inaugural lighting of the Town of Wendell Christmas tree, which is brand new this year, which I'm very excited about. And we also have one other huge secret that's a surprise that I know they're all nervous because I'm even mentioning it here, because I'm dying to spill the beans, but I'm not going to. So come out and see it. It's going to be a really fun evening, and bring your kids, and I hope to see you out there that night. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we're adjourned.